Hey everyone, it's Hit and Hustle from irsportsdaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama from his new bunker. He is in a new bunker today, the pod room, and we're here to talk Notre Dame versus Navy. And I just want to thank everyone for joining the show so far. Thank you everyone for trickling in, and that's great. Baby Beast is here. Baby Beast, hello, says the Baby Beast. And you weren't in the show yesterday, but that's fine. It was a new day, so that's no problem.
Man of mystery, baby beast.
Mad of mystery.
It could
So
be or woman.
or woman of mystery. You never know. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time, hit the like button, hit subscribe button. You're going to want to catch this show. And while you're doing that, by the way, go back and watch the Baby Beast. You don't have to apologize. It's no problem. Go back and watch the show from yesterday. We did a whole bunch of run game stuff, and Dan Orlowski put some good stuff out on the Twitter machine today, and we broke down some similar things, and I think people will like it very much. So go back and watch that. That should be in the Hit and Hustle link, and that's why you want to subscribe to irishsportsdaily.com, is that you can get all the good stuff. When shows come on and that sort of thing, you don't want to miss anything. Rajon is here. Baby B says man, not woman. So it's all cleared up. It's all cleared up. Rajon says,
We
hi
don't
guys.
discriminate.
I'm not going to be happy if good Notre Dame doesn't show up first quarter Sunday. Yeah. I mean, who wants bad Notre Dame
I think
to show
that's
up?
fair.
That's a fair take. This is the first time on the road Notre Dame is playing a kind of a dud, right? Because all the other road games were tough ones, right? Obviously, Ohio State, North Carolina, BYU was difficult, and then who am I missing? Syracuse. Obviously,
yeah.
that was a good opponent, and now they're going on the road and they're going to face kind of a tomato can, I guess, in a way. But we'll talk about that. But Jamie, it is Thursday, and what happens every Thursday?
Well, I published 6 thoughts on Thursday.
6 thoughts on a Thursday. Jamie Uyeyama coming out. So, Jamie, why don't you give us all a little sneak peek, right? I encourage everyone to go to irishsportsdaily.com and to keep checking that out. So, but Jamie, why don't you go over 6 thoughts on a Thursday and what you talked about?
Yeah, well, one of the things I talked about was, how Notre Dame had obviously after the Stanford game, things could have really spiraled out. I mean, you lose to the second time in a season, you lose to a team that you're clearly better than. And I mean, Stanford has pretty much sucked since then too. They've still been bad. So losing that game obviously looks worse in hindsight, but that's a game where Notre Dame could have easily fallen apart. I mean, you and I have seen Notre Dame teams fall apart after losing a game like that. And I think one of the things with why they didn't fall apart, I think you have to give credit to Marcus Freeman and his message that he has sent to his players, even if he's having hard conversations publicly or privately. He's not publicly. He never demeans any players. He never calls out a coach. He always is like the guy kind of taking, not taking the fall, but saying like, looking internally, right?
He takes accountability.
And I think if he had looked at it from a different perspective, that's how things fall apart, right? And that's how guys are like, I don't even want to play for this guy. Or like coaches are like, I'm already looking for my next job. Like, like that's what happens when you have that. But when you have a coach who has your back, even if he's calling you out in private and saying like, hey, we need this to be better, publicly he's backing you. And he's saying like, you're my guy. And it's like, and it's to that tweet that Notre Dame put out where real recognize real, right? Where they mentioned, Freeman was asked about Tommy Rees coming down and kind of his reaction to Drew Pine and how those guys kind of embraced after at the end of the game. And it was one of those things where, there's like this narrative that like he's too harsh on Drew Pine, right? And it's like, but you see that when you see what kind of relationship, that's like visual evidence of the kind of visual evidence of the kind of relationship that they have, right? And I think that's the kind of thing that's important, because you got to be able to sometimes like kick a guy in the butt, figuratively, and then after that, pat him on the back later, right? And that's something that's so important. And I think, and when you have that kind of level of trust, where you can do that and then tell the guy, hey man, I love you. Like after that too, that it can take you a long way. And that's going to be able to not only make the guys play for you better, but also, attract people to come coach for you, to come play for you. And I think that's like an important message that I think that, and it's one thing to just say, hey, I'm rooting for Marcus Freeman because he's this type of guy. But it's another thing to say that, well, you're seeing the results of that happening, right? And that's what you're kind of seeing. And that kind of leads back into the recruiting, right? Where they, if they kind of finish out like they should the rest of the season too, you can tie in results with that kind of message and with those kind of relationships. And that's how things get really rolling. And obviously they're doing a good job recruiting. There's no doubt about that. But then that's how you can kind of take it to another level.
Yeah. And the trust piece is really key to that, because, he's asking the guys to trust him and his plan. Right. And so when they lose, to Marshall and then Stanford, he's asking them to trust him. So then if he steps out on them and it's like, no, we had a good plan. Like we had this, that, and the other thing. And we just like the players kind of blew it. Like you can kind of tell if someone's putting it on the players, right? Coaches did a good job. The players need to do the thing. Then they start to, they don't trust you then. And then they don't buy into what you're selling them at that point. Because he's talked about how they're super physical, right? And you got to buy into that, right? That's a change. If you're going to be physical during the year, which is not a normal thing, right? Across the country, it's not just a Notre Dame thing. Like once the year starts, everything kind of tapers down, right? You want to keep people healthy. And Notre Dame's doing it another way. And so they have to buy into that. If he is then throwing them under the bus, and it's like, well, wait a minute, like but now we start to not believe in the process. And so he continues to ask them to trust in the process and to believe in what they have doing. And then when he takes accountability, when it doesn't work out, and he says, don't worry, like it's going to work out. Like I remember in a press conference, I think it was maybe after Stanford, where he said, don't worry. We're going to get this figured out. We will. I don't know why it happened, but we'll get it figured out. And so then everyone, he's like, just trust me. And then they do. And then you see the results against Syracuse and you see the results against Clemson. That's when you build the ultimate confidence in the team. And I'm very curious to see if the team starts to believe now that they are tougher and stronger than every other program that they come up against right now, because they've been through more in practice and they feel like they're kind of a tougher team at this point. And there's evidence for it, right? Against Syracuse and against Clemson, right? There's evidence that that's the case. Let's see how it goes against Navy and then Boston College and then ultimately on to USC, and let's see how that goes. So I think that's a really good point that you made there. I want to bring up a question from Mitchell Vahilek. He says, weather looks to be clearing up, but spread and total keep dropping. Leads me to believe Notre Dame has injuries. Do you know anything about that? I mean, Marcus Freeman speaks in 20 minutes, so
yeah,
he might bring it. I doubt it. Just he never brings up injuries and anything like that. I think it's pretty Notre Dame wants to run and Navy wants to run, and so you figure there's not going to be a lot of possessions in this game. I think that's and I think it might still be windy. So I don't think it's going to be raining, but I think it still might. The wind might be blowing a little bit, so that kind of lends itself to a lower scoring game.
Yeah, I think that. And then I think first of all, the guys who bet on these games, like the sharp money, and these guys who bet on these games, they look at like the analytics and they look at like, Notre Dame's strength is going against Navy's strength. So there's that. They, like you said, there's going to be limited possessions. So it's like, Notre Dame could dominate the game and win by 3 scores and be up by 3 scores. Then all of a sudden Navy gets a backdoor cover. Like at the end, that's just how it could go. Right. Because of where, things are there. And then you look at also too, like Notre Dame, obviously their biggest weakness in offense is the passing game in general. And that's Navy's a horrible against the pass. So it's like, if Notre Dame was even competent, I mean, I guess they're semi-competent, but like if they were above average, I mean, this is a game that Drew Pine would throw for 300, right? Like that's kind of what you would look for it, right? Like when they played Navy in 2019, right? They averaged 13.9 yards per attempt. Like that's insane, right? Like, so, and that's kind of where they're at. They're one of the worst passing defenses in the country. So I think it's like some of it is matchup. And then also some of it is Navy played Cincinnati last week. It was a tight game. It was 2010.
Yeah.
2010, right? So, 10-point game in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't think Cincinnati was ever really in danger of losing that game, but certainly like they didn't run away from them, right? And you would say like Cincinnati, I mean, comparable to Notre Dame in terms of this year and stuff too, right? So, I mean, it could easily just be a 10-point game, and that's how it goes. And all it takes too, because Notre Dame plays in a way that they aren't like the most explosive offense, they have to execute and they have to do these things. So you show up on a noon game after you had a physical matchup the week before. I mean, it could be a little bit of a letdown. I mean, they still will probably win the game and probably win it pretty convincingly, but they might not meet the number that people want to see if you're betting on it.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't take much. It really doesn't, especially for this team, because you can't score in bunches, right? Like last week, they got the block punt touchdown, they got a pick 6 touchdown, they got a pick and a short field, right? Those all lead to that's 21 points right there. And so Notre Dame hasn't gotten that in other games. That's why you lose to Stanford, right? That's why you lose. You don't get any of those free points. Like they had 2 offensive, like two true drives on offense. One was 11 for 75 and one was 11 for like 73 or something like that. And then those are the 2 long scoring drives that the offense had all game, right? And so, again, against Stanford, you get those long drives, but then you don't get any of those fumbles. You lose a couple fumbles yourself, and that's how you end up with 14 points, And so it's easy to see a scenario where it's like, yeah, a lot of the things that went right last week don't go right this week, all kind of Notre Dame's own doing. And here you are, right? That's why I was just a second ago, I was kind of wondering, like, is this team ready to turn the corner? Are they ready to not have these dud performances in them where you just like, you don't, things don't go your way. And like you can blow out a team kind of, basically 4 straight weeks, where it's like you do that. So that's where this is going to be interesting.
I'm not putting money on Notre Dame to cover in this game. I just think it's like one of those games you stay away, even though I could easily see Notre Dame winning by 28 points, but I could also see like Navy keeping it close. And all of a sudden it's like, 10 points, 13 points, whatever. Like you just don't know. And especially too, it's like a game that like Navy, like you're 3-6 at Navy, but all of a sudden you have a chance to beat Notre Dame. That's like your season. It's like their season right now is Notre Dame and Army. That's their whole season. That's all they care about, right?
Yeah,
so if they can do anything to win these games and get it close, they're going to do it.
I mean, if Notre Dame has the ball, like against Clemson, if Notre Dame has the ball with 6 minutes left in the second quarter and it's 7-0, it feels totally different than when you're playing Clemson, That's like my whole point about playing these duds. It's like, the mindset is different. And so it's not, I don't even know about like a prediction in this game. It's because you imagine a game can go one kind of way, but you can also see it going, in a bad way, where if you have trouble scoring, games can be close against whoever. It doesn't matter who it is, and it doesn't mean there's a reason for it or rhyme or reason. I mean, we can look at the matchups and we'll preview the matchup, but if Notre Dame plays a poor version of themselves, it could be a low scoring game, and in that one, you open yourself up to losing. Craig Hearing asks, do you think they go to Styles early to get him some confidence like they did previously with Estime?
I think I'd see it where they do something. If I was Tommy Rees, I would probably I'd give him like a carry. Like I'd do like a little like a pop pass jet sweep kind of deal, or like a reverse or something if I was going to do that. So I'd be like, you don't even have to worry. We're not even going to just make you think about running and catch. We're just going to say, here's the ball. And then you can just go and make a play. That's what I would do with Styles in this game. I mean, they could do that, but this is a game too, where like I could easily see like a guy like Styles or Jaden Thomas. All of a sudden you're like, whoa, these guys had a big game, because Navy's DBs are like really overmatched. They're not good. They're not good, especially like pretty much all over the secondary. They're inferior.
It's funny. I was thinking the same thing about Styles. Put him in the backfield. Put him in the backfield with in a 2-back set, and have him be that guy, and motion him out, or whatever you would give to Tyree, like give it to Styles. It doesn't have to be like 4 or 5 touches or whatever. It just get him involved in that sense, like that little up the seam play they do to Tyree. Give that one to Styles. Why not? Right? See how that works with him. So I think there are things they can do to get him the ball, and I think that's a good thing that they can do. All right, Rajon, he asked a question that can kind of get us into the preview. Are Navy's defensive run game stats so good because their pass game stats are so bad? So why don't you go over kind of the Navy defense and how the Notre Dame offense can attack them? Because this is, I mean, you look at Navy's, what is it, like 3.1 yards per carry allowed, something like that?
Yeah.
It's just like their numbers are kind of unbelievable. Some teams ran on them, but there is a hint of it, and it's a good question, that maybe it is because teams are just throwing on them. So why don't you tell us about
I think
their defense?
Some of that is true, I think, right? Like, because teams throw on them, so they don't even. I mean, it's just one of those things. If it's what any team does, what are they bad at? What are they bad at? We're going to attack their weakness, right? So that's what teams are doing. So certainly, like the total numbers, like that's plays a big part of it. And then I think, but Navy's been good against the run. They've been really good. Yeah. They're always undersized, but they blitz a ton on early downs, right? They blitz a ton to try to like disrupt. They got a 19.2% havoc rate. Like that's an outstanding havoc rate. Like they create a lot of negative plays, right? And that's just one of the things that they kind of have to do, right? They have to do it because they don't have a guy who's just going to just dominate at the point of attack and make a play, right? Yeah. They need to do a lot of movement. They need to do like a late semi. They need to change up fronts. They need to like blitz guys from all angles. That's what they need to do to create stuff. And I think some of that is, they do it because they have to, and it's helpful for them against run, but it also leaves them vulnerable against the pass in certain situations too. Why they're like, pretty horrendous. Like they're 131st in EPA per pass, right? And PFF has them 126 in coverage grade, 118th in giving up passing plays of 20 yards or more, right? So that's pretty terrible, right? And it's terrible all around. And I think one of the things too, in terms of them running the ball or people running the ball, right? Like they're 11th in opportunity rate, which is the 4 yards or more. When 4 yards are available. And so they don't allow a lot of those runs, and they're 7th in stuff rate, right? That's really good. On the other hand, that's kind of what Notre Dame is like, one of the best stuff rate teams in the country. They're their offense, right? They're one of the best opportunity rate teams. They're 20th in opportunity rate, They averaged less than 4 yards per carry the first 3 games. So that's like, so you'd probably say they're probably closer to top 5 since those first 3 games.
Yeah.
So, and they just ran it on a team that really had pretty comparable run defense, kind of, like deeper numbers and just raw numbers to Navy. So I think because Notre Dame's bigger, and that's another thing. Like they don't have guys that are the teams in the AAC, they don't have like a Mitchell Evans at tight end who's gonna blow a dude off the ball who's like a 240-pound end, right? Or like, I mean, if he's got to block like a 200-pound linebacker, forget it, right? Like, so they can still do all these things, but it's like if Notre Dame comes out and just executes and stays who they are, they're going to run the football on Navy. They will. I'm confident of that. I don't think and they just played Clemson. It was like even better havoc rate than them, 22.7%. Like, and I mean, how many negative plays did they have in the game? Not many, right? So, I think you look at it, it's just like Navy has done this, and I think they obviously play good run defense, but they also haven't played a team that is stylistically the same as Notre Dame, has the size of Notre Dame, and I think that's going to be big in this game.
Does the fact that Notre Dame goes heavy kind of negate their run blitzes? Because I feel like run blitzes against like a 5-6 man front for Notre Dame can get home a lot easier. You can put the offense in a bad situation where you're putting it on the quarterback to then decide to pull it, right? Like we talked a lot early in the year about like Notre Dame's running into bad numbers, right?
Yeah.
And I think going heavy kind of negates the numbers conversation because now it's like they can only match numbers. They can't actually outnumber you if Notre Dame's putting a lot up front. So does that negate a lot of the run blitz havoc stuff that Navy does?
I think some of it, yeah, some of it for sure, right? And then the other part is that when you have more bodies there that are constricted, it can give you more chances to attack for them too, because you have a lot more bodies close.
You have more players to bring, yeah.
Right? But at the same time, it can also like open things up because now if you're doing too much of that, then all of a sudden there's more gaps to be exploited because it's just as disciplined as you can get in terms of what you're doing. If Notre Dame is coming out and running a ton of unbalance and stuff like that, and that's something that I mean it's obviously a different system, but that's something that Air Force does. And Air Force, I mean, obviously is a different system, whatever, but Air Force runs on Navy every year, like puts up huge numbers on them. So I think there's a little bit of that approach to what you see. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they had more negative plays in this game, like Navy did than Clemson had against Notre Dame. But like, I would also be very surprised if Notre Dame rushed for under 5 yards per carry. I think they're going to run them.
Do you feel like this would be this is a kind of game where it's like maybe a couple more 1 to 2 yard runs, but there's also like the one where you break through and you're free, you're clear, and that you get the big one off of that, kind of like the 2015 team. It was like that. The 2015 Notre Dame team was very they had a lot of bad stuff, the bad stuff rate, but they had a ton of explosives because once you got through the line, then you were good. Do you see that kind of happening?
I see that.
I mean, we haven't seen it, but you know what I mean? Maybe not like a 70 yarder, but maybe more like a 20, 30 yard run where it's against Clemson, it's a 12, 13.
Yeah. I think I could see a Stemi and Diggs getting a couple of those for sure in this game. And this is another game too, where I think if you do some of the stuff with Tyree and get him out to the perimeter, they're not fast out there. They're not fast up there, so they're going to get out leverage where, whether it's a pass or a run or whatever. I mean, this is a game where Tyree could look really healthy in this game because, he's just going to be a superior athlete to those guys. And angles get tougher when you're going against guys that are just way faster than
you. Yeah. Keith Haring asked a question. It's sort of related to the defense, but it's kind of plays into the offense as well. If D continues to play really well, would you expect Notre Dame to win field position this game and ultimately help the offensive opportunities? So, Notre Dame, I think, is the best field position team in college football. And it's been it's not an opinion. I think it's borne out by stats. So the thing about Navy is that they are very good at getting a couple first downs at least per drive.
Yeah.
And so they're always kind of flipping the field, and then they're running clock all the same, so that, you're making them punt from their own 40 maybe, but now you have to drive a long way to score, and which then takes a long time, and then they get the ball, and then they take a long time. And then so that's how the game kind of, gets shorter, right? So that's an interesting thing. Like, can Notre Dame get off the field relatively early to make their, their punt game and their own punt game and the punt return game and punt blocks, all that, like a factor. So that's kind of like a game within the game in terms of getting more possessions and more quality opportunities. Let's see. Rajon asks, play action. Is this a play action? Is this going to be?
This has got to be a play action game.
Every game, Jamie. You know what? Too
every game, but this game definitely.
Okay, so obviously, lots of credit for Tommy Rees, right? And full credit, right? And no, I'm not trying to take anything away. There was one play that I was like, I don't understand what Tommy is doing. It was the play right after the 3rd and 10 run where Estime gets outside, and it's like, oh, like great play call, right? Like they expected pass, they run the ball, gets to the outside, get like 14 yards, first down, great play call, right? Next play, you go 13 personnel, and they're in shotgun, and it's straight drop back with no play action on first down.
That is just,
why would you not go play action there? And so,
I don't know.
No one's open because they don't bite up. I was like, well, I don't get it. Why would you on first
down?
Those
safeties are dying to bite up,
right? Because you just ran it on them. So I was like, and honestly, there should almost never be a first down play, like 1st and 10. Maybe if it's like 1st and 20 or whatever, there should almost never be a first down play where you don't go play action. Right. So that was one that just like, so we talk about it, Rajon, we talk about play action, and great play action game. Great. And it's like, we'll get six.
I think this is going to be, though, in terms of the play action stuff, I think it's going to be like a lot like the North Carolina play action where these guys, I mean, they're going to be like the whole time too. The exact same thing that they had with Clemson, where Clemson's like, they're geeking up to stop the run, right? Like they're going to be ready to go to stop the run. And it's just, I think guys are going to be running wide open. That's just like, and I mean, first of all, you've seen it a lot against Navy this year, but second of all, I definitely think, against Notre Dame, and they're like basically a 70% run team right now. Like, it's going to be open.
Please do it. Please do it. So you mentioned that the outside, could this be the game that Braden Lenzy gets free and fulfills his destiny as the deep ball player? Tobias, right? Get them on a combo, right? Little post corner situation, get them mixed up. I like the screen game. I always like the screen game. If I recall from 2019, there was a good amount of free access that was available to Notre Dame. Is that still the case? Does Navy still play it that way on the outside to protect their defensive backs?
I think they do a lot of that because they are worried, right? They're totally worried against beating over the top, right? So, I think that's the other thing too. And I think where you're going to look, and don't be fooled if be like, well, Drew Pine, he's gaining confidence again. If he has like a 75% passing day, do not be fooled by that. Like, that's just the opponent, right? Like, I think that's kind of the nature of it. But I mean, I think it would help certainly if that happened. And I think I think they are going to throw more in this game just because Navy just invites you to do it.
Right.
And
right.
Yeah, I think that's,
and that's like I said, if it's free access, you got to be able to do that stuff. You
got to hit the layups.
Right. It's not, again, there's a difference between we're putting the game on Drew Pine and like, hey, please get the ball out to where a receiver where it's just like they're not even really trying to defend it. They need to be able to do those things. All right, let's switch over to the defense and Navy's offense, because I know Navy, the starting quarterback they had, I think for the first 6 games, I think it was, or first 7 games, he is out for the year. And they have a backup now who's coming in. They might have a couple quarterbacks actually, like one is more of a thrower. So Jamie, tell me about Navy's offense with their backup quarterbacks, and I guess any other injuries too. You mentioned some of those as well.
Well, I mean, those are the big ones. Those are the big things. Ty Lavatai was the starter. I wouldn't call him their best player. I guess you kind of would have to, but it's not like he was a dynamic guy, but he was a good decision maker at least, right? And like a bigger, more physical, like kind of short yardage guy. And Xavier Arline is the guy who's in for them now, and he's more of like, taller, but more of in the Malcolm Perry mold. Like he's got some juice. He's got some juice. He's got some speed. He's a guy that if you get a bad angle on him or whatever, I mean, he could all of a sudden break one, right? Like get like a 30-yard gain or something like that. Like that could easily happen. My guess is that when he's there, because whenever it's the backup quarterback, I'm like, this guy, there's a reason, even though he's like the faster guy, there's a reason he's the backup. And it's probably because he's probably not a good decision maker in terms of the option game. So I would think they probably run a little bit more designed stuff with him than you would have normally see. And then the other guy, Masai is the other guy. And he's like, more of the thrower. And I think it's kind of more obvious when he's in the game that he's going to be the thrower.
Yeah. Just a quick update. Marcus Freeman is speaking. Brandon Joseph is doubtful. So I was going to do a little, I guess, tweet about this, but I'm tracking the Xavier Watts situation. I feel like this could be a good game for him. I think he had a good game against Navy last year with the tackles. I think that was kind of his breakout game. If I recall, he had a couple of good plays against the option last year. And he did some things against Clemson that I thought they weren't like anything with like the Ben Morrison, like flashy plays, but he made some plays that were like, he is understanding the defense and he's understanding the collaborative nature of what it means to be a part of a defense. And when you get that, that's when the next step after that is the playmaking. So I'm very curious to see if he's the one who gets the opportunity in this game, because he absorbed a lot of the Brandon Joseph missed snaps last week, right? He out-snapped Houston Griffith by, I think, 20-something snaps. I mean, he was clearly the one they went to in that position, and they clearly like him there. So and DJ Brown's going to be a mainstay because A, he's a good tackler, and B, he's experienced. So they want experience back there against Navy. So I'm very curious to see how Xavier Watts takes this opportunity, and if he's the one who gets the opportunity ultimately. So any thoughts on that, Jamie?
Yeah, I think could be a really big game for Watts. And I think, this was it the Navy game or the first game that he was kind of noticeable last year? I can't remember.
It was, I think it was, he made a couple plays against Virginia. But then I think against Navy, it was one where he had a couple, like a tackle for loss or something like that. Rob, next man up is Salerno. Everyone's favorite situation there. So that's one, honestly, that's one where Styles was such a good punt returner in high school. Like, why is he not involved? I don't
mean, probably because of hands.
It is a situation. The dropping is not good, right? He has 5 on the year, so that's probably it. That's true. But like, I mean, you wouldn't do it now. It's one of those things. Like, why? Because maybe they knew in camp that he had a drops problem, or he wasn't consistent catching the ball that way. But like, you would know in camp whether like you want to try to get him involved there. So I don't know. That was weird. Anyway, but moving on. So do you feel like, okay, so someone asked, and I don't know if I put it up. Oh, Chris Wojak put up, is this a Chris Smith kind of game in regards to plugging up the fullback? So like Chris Smith, Gabe Rubio, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think those guys could probably play more in this game, a little bit more than you normally see, especially because, I mean, it's not like going to be like a pass rush game for those guys, right? And that's where, even if you've seen how they've kind of like selectively used, specifically Rubio, is like he'll come in on first down. It's like, oh, this is like a rundown, whatever, like near the opposing goal line, and he'll come in just for that, and then he's out after they get like a stuff or something like that, right? Like because it's second and long, and that's a passing down, right? So I think that's definitely it. But the one thing with Rubio is that he obviously hasn't played in against this thing too. So that's something where, you might say, oh, hey, he's the guy. But like Chris Smith, I have a feeling, I would be lying if I told you I knew what every offense was running in the Ivy League, but like there's got to be like somebody who's running a triple option in the Ivy League. Mm-hmm. It's got to be something like that, right? He's bound to have seen it at some point in his career. But I mean, to me, I think the big guy in this game, I mean, even though he's the little guy, is Howard Cross. Howard Cross is the guy who's, I think, would expect to have like a big impact. And then also too, like I think Jason Adamilola, like this is a game too where you got to kind of slide in some of these like little like slanting your guys inside to kind of like change up their blocking angles. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a game where Jason Adamilola, you popped in and it was like, oh, he gets a couple tackles for loss in this game.
Yeah. Keith Hearing asks, what type of defensive formation do you expect them to play since they have been a nickel team? I believe last year they used 4 linebackers.
Well, they're like they're a 4-2-5, but they mix it up, right? They mix it up. Right. They're different. Like John Marshall is like he's like the guy for them right now, and he's a safety, but he's a linebacker. You know what I mean? Like
I think he's asking Notre Dame.
For Notre Dame. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would think that they're probably going to play. They're going to obviously have 3 linebackers on it at all times, right? So, like, this is definitely a game. Like, Jack Kaiser's going to play a lot more in this game. He didn't play much last game. They only played pretty much Marison. Bertrand for most of the game. Like, he's going to play a lot more. And this is even a game too that I think you kind of miss, like having a Bo Bauer, because just having a guy who's actually played against it. So I don't know. But also too, these are some of these games too where you find out you're like, Junior Tuihalamaka, like didn't really expect to see him play, and then all of a sudden he played a ton because you're like, wow, he really like shined in practice this week going.
Could you see? So they've been putting him at Viper a little bit, so they've been putting him down. Could you see like a 5-2 formation where he's on the end? And then you have Marist and Bertrand, at linebacker, and then you drop the safeties down to like 10 yards or whatever, and they're heavy fill players, and the corners are just basically in man. Could you see something like that?
Yeah, I could definitely see something like that.
I think I feel like the 5-2 has worked out really well for them in the past.
Yeah, I'm always a big 5-2 against triple option guy. I just think you want to get those. You want to cover up those guards. You want to cover up those guards because you want to be able to take away the dive there as much as possible with the front. And I think too, this could be something where you're like Foskey could be in a 3-point stance for a lot of the game. He might be a guy who plays on the outside. Obviously, he's capable, but it's like I think you would almost like it could be a situation where you see, Justin Admiral is going to play outside. Foskey's going to be in a 3-point in this game.
Okay. So Foskey 3-point. So this is where you would have the Chris Smith over the nose with like Rubio, yes. And then you would have Adamilola and Cross covering the guards, and then maybe Nana, Mills, Foskey, Botelho. Yeah. This could be a
Botelho too. This is another Botelho.
This could be a heavy Botelho game, right? This could be.
Although in saying that, this is a game. I think Botelho. First of all, I think kudos to Botelho. Like, after kind of like really looked like he completely fell out of the mix. Obviously got a couple sacks against Syracuse. Just absolutely stoned the trap against Clemson and is playing more. And this is the kind of game be disciplined, man. Be disciplined, because if he's disciplined, he could have a day here. He could have a day. So, and they need him to continue to be a guy for them, because obviously they're going to need him to be a guy next year.
Look, I put the video out of him not blowing up Miles Murphy on the punt block, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of not, because
no, it's a real thing. Matt and I talked about it during the game. We were like, he could have killed Miles Murphy. He literally he wanted to have.
Right. Well, it's like you he's sizing him. He's like, you could see him debating, and then he just gives him a little shoulder. Hey man,
he had it in his head.
I could have, and I didn't. So
I've had that 100% happen to me multiple times in games where I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna just destroy this guy right now. And then I've had my coach no, don't. And then I'm like, you're so lucky, man. You have that in your head, even though now, first of all, this is much different when I was playing, because maybe you shouldn't do that, but it wasn't really considered dirty. And now it is considered dirty. Right. So,
right.
But just imagine if Botelho did do that, that could be targeting out of the game. You take a touchdown off the board. It could have been a horrible. So hopefully that's a really sign of maturation from him, because you watch him running down on kickoffs where he's punching guys at the end of plays and stuff. You're like, oh God, please don't throw a flag here.
Look, obviously he's shown them something, because he's getting real snaps now, and
I've always been a Botelho guy. I've always been
who isn't a Botelho guy?
But I was really, really high on him. I thought he was going to be, and he still might be, but because he's to me, a classic guy who's need to not physically mature, but mentally mature, because, he was the guy who didn't, I believe, I can't remember if it was the Army game. He didn't go to the Army game because he got in trouble before it. Right. That's just the kind of thing. He was just, and then obviously he got sent home for a time, and then he came back. So he's had, a whole different level of stuff that he's had to go through. And really, if you think about it, it's year 3 for him. And for a lot of guys, it doesn't really happen until year 3. So, you just hope that this is the next piece of it for him.
Yeah. As far as outside, this is one of those games where you could almost see Bracey starting for Ben Morrison, just because of the experience factor. Yeah. And that he's played against the option before.
It's obviously not a nickel game. Yeah.
Right. It's not a nickel game, but you want him out there, and you want that experience. And I think that might be good for him. So that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Ben Morrison had the good tackling game against Clemson, and Cam Hart did as well. So that's got to continue, right? I feel like you get good tackling from the corners. You're really getting Navy in a bad way there. So that's something that's going on. Go ahead.
This is also too a game where and I know both of us, everybody kind of feels the same way about Houston Griffith. He's not an impact guy. He really has never been that guy. But this is also the kind of game where you could see him playing in a more of a role than he has, because he's going to go and he's going to play downhill and tackle, and where you say like X Watts, you kind of feel like, oh, he could have a monster game. Houston Griffith might be the guy who's more dependable too. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at safety. Like I always loved when Julian Love played safety in these games. Yeah. And you're like, oh, you just, yeah. I mean, obviously the guy's playing safety and starting in the NFL and doing pretty good, but Julian Love could have played anywhere in the secondary and been a stud. And I wouldn't say they have anyone right now who's particularly like you could move around like Love. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with some of these guys and where they do it, because it's like, are you going to not play Ben Morrison in this game? I mean, maybe that might be the case. Clarence Lewis, who knows, right? Who knows?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't know, and you don't know how they've taken to it in practice either, So I think the good thing too, especially with we're talking about the defensive front, and we're talking about how they have how they can line up and that sort of thing. And we were just kind of like, oh yeah, but Telho too, right? Like he could play a major role, right? And so it's like that the fact that that's a thing where it's like, oh yeah, like he's actually a factor. Like it was 3 weeks ago. It's so funny how like 3 weeks ago we were like, who on the defense is playing well? And I feel like that conversation has completely flipped since then, right? Like UNLV, they played, fine. Syracuse, they played really well. And then obviously Clemson, they played really well. And so I feel like, who knows what to attribute that to, but I feel like all of a sudden you feel like everyone is playing much better, right? The linebackers are playing much better. Like Marist and Bertrand coming off two of their better games. Foskey's creating more havoc. Now Nana is becoming like a big force. Jason Adamalola is making more plays. Like, so I just, and Brandon Joseph, who's not playing, like he gets the pick 6 against Syracuse, and he had another pick that was called back. So I feel like it's all kind of on the up and up right now.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, I don't know. The fact that that's true makes me, I don't know if it makes me confident or cautious about how they're going to play in this football game. So, but it is definitely nice. As far as, Navy, one thing I haven't looked at is how Navy is as a special teams team. Does Notre Dame continue the punt blocking glory of 2022 in this game? Is it possible? Is Navy susceptible in the special teams game?
Oh, well, they haven't had a couple kicks blocked this year. So, I mean, I have to think that this is the other thing too. When that happens, they're spending way more time on like their punt team than they normally would. So,
right.
Normally and you're thinking like, oh, that's how important could that be? Like, it's like, well, if you're spending an extra 10 minutes of practice doing that, then you're doing less of something else. Right. So, I can't see how they wouldn't be like, we got to get this short up. This happens. It's like they're looking at all these scenarios, but I'm going to say they're going to block another one because they just keep doing it. So you might as well just,
So if you've never, it's hard to describe what it is when you are on like when you come into a week where it's like, hey, we have to spend a lot of time on like punt block. Because here's the other part. Everyone loves special teams, right? Generally speaking, like you can get guys, I don't mean everyone, but like you can get guys who it's like I love to cover kickoffs. I love to cover kickoffs, or I love to be on punt block, that sort of thing, right? Because you're being aggressive, or you get to return a punt or something like that, kickoff return. Punt block, no one wants to be on punt block. It's not fun. It is literally just like, especially the 3 up backs, like you're standing there and they're running into you. Everyone is kind of like, I don't really care about blocking this guy. Like I want to run down and actually cover the punt. And so then when you play a team like Notre Dame, where it's like, hey, we got to spend, like everyone pay attention now. Okay. Yeah. We've kind of been going through the motions before. Everyone pay attention for 10 minutes because they've blocked 75 kicks and we don't know where they're coming from and all those other things. And so it like the stress level is, and the other part too is you don't know where Notre Dame sees a weakness.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of plan for it, but like Notre Dame has like probably has like a little tweak to what they're doing to exploit a weakness that you aren't really sure you have, and you won't know about it until the punt's blocked and it's going the other way. So it's like such an advantage that Notre Dame has. It's such a big deal.
I think what's incredible too, if you think about it, like Miles Murphy was on the punt team. He was the guy that Botello obviously could kill.
Right.
I mean, this guy's Dane Brugler's got him as top 5 players in the NFL draft. Like, so they're like putting dudes on there to make sure that it happens. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not like getting it right. So, I don't know. I think the other thing is, I think it's just when you're doing it and you have so much confidence, like, I think they're going to block. I think they're going to block another one. I think they're going to block another one in this game. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at least cause at least one just shank too, just to tear.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Keith Haring is the MVP of this pod. Thank you, Keith, for being who you are and being wonderful.
We got the Haring brothers here.
I think we do. I think we do. We had another one. The Haring Bros. I like that. Where are you at? Where is this at? Craig and Keith. It's very fun. Do they pull a fast one and have Kyle Hamilton play in this game, still having 1 year of eligibility? His 4th down stop against Navy was one of my favorite plays by him. So I don't know if people know, but the Ravens played on Monday, and now they're on a bye.
I was just gonna say, this game is in Baltimore.
The game is in Baltimore.
A
week off. Game is in Baltimore. Put him in the Brandon Joseph 16. They won't notice. Who would notice?
I think everyone would notice, because this is the one thing you know more than anyone. Kyle Hamilton is a unicorn. There's nobody built like him. So they have no one that he could just slip into the jersey and they'd be like, who is this 6'4" freak of nature who's super long?
They literally have no one. They literally have no one on the roster.
I mean, nobody has anybody like that. So it's that's the one thing. Or else I'd say, slip on a jersey and let him go. But I don't think they'd be able to get away with it. I love the Baltimore connection.
Put him in the, who kind of looks like it. Put him in the Aiden Gabira. Put him in the 91.
It's honestly like a DN, just like the closest thing.
It's like, hey, why is
something? Yeah.
Why is Aiden Gabira playing safety, and why is he unbelievable?
I'll tell you what, Greg. You know what? This game would be a good Kyle Hamilton appearance for. Get him against this Navy pass defense.
Let's go.
Chuck it up to him.
Let's go. You know what's a bummer too is this year, if he was on the team, they would have put him on offense.
I think they would have.
I think they would have. It's just all my dreams would have come true. I appreciate you, Dan Adams. We appreciate you. All right. So what do you say, Jamie? Let's do predictions. We haven't talked about it. So where are you at? Where are you at with this? We got to send him in to Mike.
I already sent mine in. Yeah. I'm picking Notre Dame 31, Navy 14. Just because of the limited possessions, or else I'd say they'd probably score 40 in this game. And I think it's going to be like a 31-7, and they get a late score just where Notre Dame is like kind of working in backups. I think we do see a series from Steve Angeli in this game. That's my prediction.
Oh,
yeah.
What is
fourth quarter, like when it's the game's out of
handoffs?
I'm going to say they're going to throw the ball once with him. They're going to throw the ball once. He's not going to see what he likes, and he's going to run it. That's it. They're going to drop back, and he's going to run it.
No, this is what's going to be. They're going to they're going to roll him out, and they're going to cover the mayor, and he's going to throw it out of bounds. That's what's going to happen. He's going to just chuck it out. And we're going to be like,
seems like a guy. He's like, I'm getting this chance. I'm not wasting it.
Oh, you think he's running it? You think he's chucking it?
I think he's going to like spin move. I think, he's going to do it all. It's just going to, he's going to make sure. I mean, you saw him in the spring game. Look at that guy.
All right.
Look at him move.
That's true. He's fleet of foot. Oh, see what I did there? Fleet, Navy, huh? Huh?
It fits.
Do you get it on any other pod, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah. Fleet, Navy, come on. That's what it is. All right. All right. So I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say Notre Dame 27, Navy 6. I don't think Navy's gonna do anything. They're gonna get a couple field goals. Notre Dame's gonna get some red zone stops, Jamie. I feel it. I feel like all things are coming up Notre Dame. And I think they're going to have a
Navy's kicker's not good, by the way, too. Just so people know.
Oh, yeah. I like that. Okay, so a couple red zone stops, and then they're gonna have a good game on offense, but then it's gonna kind of like it'll be like 21-3. And then it's like they're driving again. It's like, oh, I'll kick a field goal, fine. It's 24-3. Then it's 24-6. You drive down, kick another field goal, fine. That's what I think I got going. Dan Adams. Wait. If people are watching the show, my bro's family is headed into town. His kids, my kid, are all going to their first Notre Dame game together on Saturday. Shout out to Greg, Christina, Sophia, Dominic, getting into DC today. Go Irish, beat Navy. I think that's a great way to end the show, Jamie.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dan. Hopefully, I hope they have a great time.
I hope they have a great time. So, look, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. It takes 2 seconds. It's free. Tune into the show every week. Jamie and I will be on the post game on Saturday. Everett gets me. Everett loves it, and that's why we're gonna pun game on point. See, everybody gets, and that's why we're
that's why you're the man.
That's why I'm the man, and that's why I'm the people's champion. All right. Post-game show. Me and Jamie after the game, right after, we're going to talk about the game.
Mike this week.
No Mike this week. He's busy doing things. And then Sunday morning after recap. You're going to want to be on that with me. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll talk to you after the game on Saturday. Have a good one.